Awesome. Welcome to another episode of the Holistic Sister Circle. Today we have Polly Benson here with us. And Polly, I'm super excited for this. For those of you who don't know much about handwriting or motor skills or just child development overall, Polly is your friend here. So we're super excited to dive into this topic. And Polly, to just really start us off, I would love for you to just share with us what drew you honestly to occupational therapy and specifically to working with children?
Oh, well, that's a good question. We've actually spent some time talking about this recently because I'm going to be on a TV show that talked about my legacy and the legacy that I want to leave. And so I had to kind of go back and reflect like where that all started and kind of pinpointed an episode on a school bus one day when I was sitting in the back. I was older, I was probably fourth or fifth grade, and the bus was really loud and everybody got in trouble. And so they pulled over, and he told the bus driver, said to everyone to quiet down, like yelled at us. And so we're all sitting there and we're all quiet and we're all waiting, and he wouldn't go and he wouldn't go, and like I think he was trying to make a point. And this little girl beside me started crying, and she was like a kindergarten, first grade, like really upset. And so I'm like, don't worry about it. And so I went up front and I said, hey, can we go? There's little kids crying in the back. And then I walked back to my seat, and he left. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, what did you say? What did you say? And I was like, well, I just told him that somebody was crying, and I mentioned that could we go, and it really was just this feeling of advocating for somebody else. And I've always been a real creative person. I've enjoyed crafts and working with my hands. And throughout my life, I enjoyed problem solving and making things. And when I got into school and college, we had to kind of decide, what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I found occupational therapy and did some volunteer work, and I loved it. It was a lot of hands on and activities and working with kids and working with people that had deficits and kind of advocating for them. So that's kind of where it all started.
I love that. Well, one, thank you so much for sharing. I'm like, we've talked a few times and we actually never talked about that. So I'm like, that's
Yeah.
awesome. In your experience, what have you seen, or just within your work overall, what have you seen that has really been um, taught about children and their inner world just over, the years that you've been just working with children? Like, what has that process looked like? And um, the reason I'm asking this too is because obviously there's so many stages of just children's lives, and we understand that with them within all of these stages and just how the world continues to develop, there's so many things that honestly parents are just a little bit concerned with,
Mhm.
especially when you are a parent of a child who may be slower when it comes to just developing overall and not really getting the answers that you're looking for. So we'd just love to know from your perspective, what has this experience just really taught you about a child's inner world and how they just kind of receive information, regardless if they're on track or if they're a little bit slower when learning?
Well, when I first was in OT and the school systems, and I went into an IEP meeting. And IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan. And so a lot of times I was in there as the professional, as the OT, and I would report on how the student was doing and where we want to take them and what kind of our goals were. And so as time went on, really, especially more recently, there's a lot of neuroaffirming type language that needs to be used. Whereas, we were maybe trying to say in the old days, like, this student will perform this task, and in a certain amount of time. Whereas now it's like we're trying to use the language to help really support the student where they're at. Um, After my kids got in school, my youngest had some speech deficits and problems. And so we got him to speech therapy. And so then I started attending IEP meetings as both a parent and a therapist. And so I could see from the parent's perspective. And I always felt like after that moment when I was in a meeting with a parent that I could see like that this certain parent needed some advocacy, or this other parent, was really fighting a system that it may or may not have been worth the battle. And so, but as far as the kids, like I just really feel like we used to be set more in goals, and I would pull that student out and work with them on that goal. Now it's more we push in and we try to work within the environment that they're in and really try to help the student to thrive, and be very cautious and concerned with not telling the student that they can't do something, but let's try a different approach and let's try something that's maybe a different way of looking at something. And I have found my biggest passion was in educating teachers and parents, because
Mm.
oftentimes we were working with the student and we never got that extra step to help the teacher understand why we did things, or the parent, this is what you can do at home. And so I think over the years that has really changed too. We're seeing more involvement by the parents, and parents do need to advocate for their student. And when somebody says, oh, it's time for discharge, then it's like, well, wait, we're not done yet. Like oftentimes in a school system, they might be graduating from a particular task or activity or grade, but then we might need to move to life skills, or we might need to look at more, how are they adapting in their current environment and non-traditional OT ways. So we're seeing a lot more of that too.
Wow. Now, this is really interesting. So, we do have one question that just came in. And the question is, let me see here. Okay. What are some of the early signs that a child is struggling with fine motor skills and parents completely overlook them?
So, one of the biggest concerns right now that you'll hear a lot of people say is kids are always on technology
Mm.
and they're not really doing the skills that I did growing up: coloring, cutting, gluing, using Play Doh, working with clay, working with our hands, doing those types of things. And, I believe there is a place and time for technology. And I also believe and can see the deficits and the problems that are showing up because of students always being on technology. So, um, some of the early signs might be that they're having struggles with cutting, or with coloring. Maybe they don't really have to hold their pencil or their crayon the correct way until like age 5 or later. We can often have students that, don't quite develop that grasp early on. But you see adults with very unfunctional grasps. So, like, for instance, when you're holding a pencil, the tripod grasp or quadrupod, which is 4 points of contact. So, I hold with a tripod grasp. So, that means you have 3 points of contact. A quadrupod is also functional, has 4 points of contact. But if your student's holding like this, or if you're an adult, they might write like this. So they're very functional and they're very fast that way. So, there's a time and a place to pick that battle. And I usually start young. But if they're in high school and they're holding their pencil funny, but they're writing fine, then, that's not a battle you want to pick. So, I look for early signs, things like tying your shoes. Like they should learn how to tie their shoes by kindergarten. Some don't, some are a little delayed, and that's okay too. But maybe they need a different way to tie their shoe or a different technique. Um, but what we often see with impaired grasp is a student that has a flexed wrist. And so, because they're playing on technology or swiping, their wrist is bent. So, I always encourage parents to use a stylus and to get the wrist in flexion so that when they're
Mm.
drawing on a device or they're tracing letters on a device, that they're more functional and more in the proper alignment for development.
Wow. I have a question for this as well, and a question to this to piggyback off of this question is, with technology, and obviously that is great for students, but what about your teenagers or your young adults or the ones who are actively on their devices all of the time, even if you work from home? Would you recommend that they have a stylus as well? Like, does that imprint um, do more harm than good as you continue to grow in age?
Um, I think, like high schoolers and middle schoolers, they become
Mhm.
very efficient at their technology, whether they have a stylus or not. I wouldn't recommend going back to a stylus with an older student
Okay.
unless they're like a special needs student and they need to write their name or they're having trouble writing the actual functional motor process of writing.
Okay.
Um, so not, typically, but what I do see is, kids that are on technology all the time. Like my son, he's 22 and he has a terrible handwriting grasp, but he's 22 and he's very independent and he's not going to change that. So, it's just a matter of like, as they're in that developmental age, did you miss it? Did you miss that stage in time? I don't know. But like my son, he's a finger pecker. He does a little bit, but I mean, there's some really cool typing programs out there that are free. And if you can get your student practicing typing, it's great fine motor skills and it's a great and
Mm.
efficient way to learn how to type. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that.
No, that's super helpful. Okay, we have one other question that just came in. Let's see. Oh no, we have two. Okay, the first one is, what does handwriting actually reveal about a child's development?
Oh wow, that's an interesting question. You know, when I look at a handwriting sample, if I'm not with a student, I'm looking at how did they actually write the, let's say, sentence. Is it super dark? Is it super light? So if it's super light, I can tell that they might be weak. If it's super dark, maybe they're having trouble with the feedback, the sensory feedback of the writing process. So they're pressing too hard because they need to get more information from the paper and pencil to their hand, to their brain.
Mhm,
Um, if a student has jagged writing, like it's not real smooth, okay, then I'm looking at, okay, now we have some control issues. So without ever even seeing the student write, I can look at the quality of the writing and I can also help to diagnose something to look at.
mm,
Kids that overlap their letters, they may have some visual perception trouble. They may need to work on spacing. If they're wearing glasses, or how's their visual acuity? We also look at their ability to erase and correct. So, erasing is a skill as well. And are they erasing a lot? And are they perfectionistic? Are they correcting? Those types of things I can look at by looking at a handwriting sample. And typically, as a parent, I would just recommend look at what's most obvious on your student's handwriting and then address that skill and talk it over with the student. I think it's really important to involve the kids in their goals. And if they have a skill they want to work on, then let's like focus on just that one thing. For instance, I had a student that was not using any descending letters. So their work sample J, G, Q, P, and Y were all on the baseline. They didn't dip down below the baseline. And
mhm,
so, is that important? Could be. You want to look at their legibility. So, if their legibility is impaired and that's something that you work on, then that might be something that would improve their legibility and just make them more aware. There's, for instance, like if you look at the H and the N, they're very slightly different, right? One's really tall and one's short. And so if they're writing really fast and maybe they don't have the attention span to take the time to slow down and make sure their letters are only half size or full size. So that's some of the reasons why I usually, or why I recommend my Legi liners, because they help students to kind of differentiate that placement and helps them to maybe strategize their um, legibility goals so that then they can practice their handwriting better.
I love that. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing. We have one other question that just well, I think it's actually a great component to what you just said. How do handwriting difficulties impact how a child sees themselves, their confidence, their voice, their willingness to try? I think that's such a good question.
Yeah, that is a great question. And oftentimes, it's not so much the student as much as their peers. And
Mm,
one of our students worked with, and I have this whole story on YouTube. It's great. His name was Court, and he was embarrassed about his handwriting. And his mom kept asking the teachers for therapy, and he didn't qualify because he didn't have the speech deficits. He didn't have the psychological deficits. He didn't have any. He was really smart. His just handwriting was not good. And so we were working on handwriting over the summer one time. And we taught him, how to be more legible and how to space his letters and how to skip lines and things like that. It was some really simple teaching, but then when he went back to school, he had what we call it, our school system was called curriculum light. And so you go in and you find out like each teacher what they're teaching and what the curriculum is. And so he had worked on some type of a handwriting sample with a picture, and it was on the wall. And he was like, "Mommy, I
mhm.
can't wait for you to go see my writing. I'm so excited for you to see my writing." And he could tell that before he was embarrassed and his peers made fun of him, but now it was like, I'm up on the wall. My teacher was so proud of my work. She put it up on the wall, and then the mom could still see that, before she'd compare his writing to everybody else's and she'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like that's my son. I could instantly pick it out." But she had to look for it. Like it was actually on level and on pace. And so that was a really important moment for her and for him to improve his self-esteem, because now he knew his writing was better. And just took a little bit over the summer and working on some fine motor strength and helping him to see what could make that writing better was just two little techniques we used. He was a fishing. He loved fishing, fisherman, fisher boy, whatever you want to call it. And so we talked about the drop down letters going below the water, like your fishing hooks. And so just one little thing like that. And it really stuck with him.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So this is so good. After I know we talked about so much as far as the development, self-esteem, things of that nature. How did all of this transpire into the Legiliner? And can you tell us a little bit more about what the Legiliner is?
Yeah, sure. So the ledging liner is a rolling ink stamp. I have one right here. And if you can see, it just has the little handwriting pattern. It has the solid line, the stripe, the dash line, and the solid line. And what was happening was I was pushing into classrooms. So we stopped pull out. We started pushing more and more into classrooms. And a student would have, like, this is one of our Halloween October worksheets, and it didn't have any lines. And so what we would do was, oh, I got to find a hard surface here because I don't want this to mess up. But what I would do is I would draw the lines on the paper right next to the student's um, writing right here. And they could practice consistently using that little dashed line. And that guideline was what would help them to differentiate the sizing of the letter. And
Mm.
the first one I actually did was this large, huge stamp. It's called a rotograph. And I would roll it across the paper. The students were like, "Let me roll the lines. Can I roll the lines?" So they were motivated and excited. And then the teachers saw it and said, "Oh my gosh, you have to patent that." And so I was like, okay, I went home and I'm like, how do I get a patent? And so I had this great idea and just this one little stamp. And I started going around to different classrooms and taking it with me. And the teachers were like, "Wow, can you make one smaller? Can you make this? Can you make that?" And so now I have 24 different stamps. And what's fun about them is that the kids are motivated by them, and they help them to consistently practice. So I could leave a stamp with the student and go off on my way to other students, other classrooms, and that teacher then can replicate those lines. A lot
Mm.
of times people ask me, "Well, why can't I just use handwriting paper?" Well, you can. But if you have a fourth or a fifth grade student, they're going to lose that paper. The teachers hoard it because they don't want to overuse it, and they don't want to use it on the rough draft. They just want to use it on the final copy. And so it's like, no, this is meant for practicing. So what's nice about the ink stamps is they're refillable ink. So you have an unlimited supply. You can roll out the lines, and it's really a win-win for both the teacher and the student. And so from there, then we went into different shapes, different curriculums. Like certain curriculums, there's a handwriting without tears, or they now go by learning without tears, so they have a specific type of line in boxes. So I made some letterbox stamps. We have a music staff. We have now ones that are shaded, and so the shading helps that student with the lowercase visual cue. And so this is my brand new one that's coming out next month, is a shaded lower half. You see how that's shaded?
Mhm.
And so let's see if I can draw this out real quick and show you that. But what's exciting about the shading is that it gives that student the feedback that they need, that this lower half is where that letter goes. Let me draw that again. So this lower half is where the
Oh, I
lowercase
see.
letters. And so sometimes with students that have ADHD or visual issues and things like that, that can help them to notice, like, okay, that's where that lowercase letter goes. So that's been kind of a fun one that we brought out of development and is coming out next month. So yeah, exciting, exciting. We have 25 different patterns now. We have some that do math problems. We have a number line. My other new one is this giant square, which I'm super excited because this giant square, let me show you something real quick. This one can be used for special ed students that are specialized instruction that need one letter per box. It's large, but we
Okay.
can do like little comic strips. We can
Oh,
do reward
cool.
charts. We can do a visual schedule. So if we have students that learn differently and need to know, like, first we're going to do this and then this, and kind of a visual schedule of what happens each day. So that one's kind of exciting for me. That one's coming out next month too. So yeah,
This is
we're
so
super excited.
exciting. I love
Yeah.
this. Can you tell us, okay, if anyone wanted to connect with you further, wanted to learn
Mhm.
more about Legiliners, like what does that process look like? How can we be involved? Let us
Yeah,
know.
so I am on all the social medias at Legiliner, so Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and those are the best places to see exciting ideas and all the different stamps, because I have so many people that will post them from their classroom, teachers, influencers that love using the stamps. So those are some great ideas. If anyone wants to buy stamps, you would go to legiliner.com and you can get a 10% discount if you get 3 or more stamps and throw them in your cart, and that'll automatically be applied. And then if they want to sign up for my newsletters, those are on my website as well. I send out 3 newsletters a week. Sunday strategies for handwriting. Worksheets Wednesdays is all free worksheet. Every single Wednesday, I send out a free worksheet. And then Feature Friday, I usually feature different other companies that are in the OT world or education space. And this Friday, I'll be having a Black Friday special. So that's something else that someone can click on there and find me and get that special too.
Amazing. Well, this is so much fun, Polly. Thank you so much for connecting with us and sharing your expertise with us. And what I'll do for everyone who's listening as well, I'll go ahead and put all of her information in the description notes of the episode, so you are more than welcome to connect with her further as well.
That sounds good.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thanks again. And again, until next time, we will be here every week. So please continue to tune in to the Holistic Sister Circle and tune into Legiliner if you want to learn more from Polly. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.